Hello and welcome to the Sustainable Materials Management Webinar Series, a joint effort between the National Recycling Coalition and the Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center. My name is Wayne Bowen. I'm the Program Manager for the Recycling Market Center and will serve as your moderator today. Today's webinar topic is NextCycle, an innovative pathway to elevated material recovery and recycled content manufacturing. We have three presenters today. Our first will be Matt Naud. He's the Associate Senior Consultant with RRS, who will provide an overview of NextCycle. And then we have Kendra Appelman-Eastvet, who is the Recycling Resources Economic Opportunity Program Administrator for the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. And she will provide a state program perspective. And then our last speaker is Lou Troiano, who's the president of Foam Cycle, who will provide a participant's perspective. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end of the presentations. So if you have a question or comment, you can use the Q&A feature located on your control panel on your screen. Please note that edited version of this webinar will be made available for viewing via YouTube links on the National Recycling Coalition and Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center websites. And also please note that the Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center, its affiliates and funders, and the National Recycling Coalition assume no liability resulting from the use of any information provided during this webinar. The webinar is provided only as an informational tool, and no discrimination is intended and no endorsement by these organizations is implied. So we're going to get started with Matt, and so you can put your screen up and get started.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and thanks to Wayne and the Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center and my colleagues Kendra and Lou for being part of this. It's an exciting time with this whole idea of building circular economies, and credit goes to Colorado for starting this a couple of years ago. And I'm going to touch a little bit on that, but mostly some of the work that's going on in Michigan is we've taken all that good learning in Colorado and brought it to another state. So again, I'm Matt Naud. I'm with Resource Recycling Systems based in Ann Arbor, and talking a little bit about NextCycle, Michigan. So with that, again, credit to Colorado, 2 years of good work there with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. There's some a PDF that's available that if you need a copy of my slides, you can get that from Wayne. So for 2 years, Colorado ran an incubator, and with the idea of how do we build end markets in these communities and start building that demand for the material that, you know, we've taught our kids how to be good recyclers, but haven't necessarily spent the same kind of time and energy building the end markets in our communities for these materials. So here on the right, you've got three of the first year winning teams: Vartega, Direct Polymers, and Farm to Table Organics. And you're also going to hear at the end from Lou, who participated in the most recent NextCycle program in Colorado. So in Michigan, this project is funded by EGLE, which is the Colorado Environment counterpart, the Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy Department at the state. And the team here is the Michigan Recycling Coalition, Centropolis Accelerator, which is a manufacturing accelerator based in Lawrence Tech, and Resource Recycling Systems. So we're based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, but about 50 consultants, US mostly, some Canada, some Germany, but half the work is states and localities, municipalities, and running good recycling compost programs. And about half the work is helping brands who make things and want them recycled. So this is the team that's working on the project here in Michigan. And RS did an economic analysis for the state. And in Michigan, we have a pretty low recycling rate. It's very cheap to landfill material here. So we bury about 6.8 million tons of material every year that could be recycled here. And we're calculating that if we could capture 2.7 million tons of that material, we would effectively triple Michigan's recycling rate, bringing it from 18 to 45%. And it would create $9 billion in labor economics, labor income, and over $30 billion in direct and indirect economic output. And in comparison for Michigan, that starts to bump into the economic value of tourism in the state of Michigan, which is pretty high. So with those numbers, this just kind of sets the stage that economically, this is an area that we probably ought to be paying attention to. And how can we start driving innovation in that space? So again, we also calculate that this could be as many as 138,000 jobs in the state of Michigan. So NextCycles really built around all of these 6 components in the kind of recovery framework, with a primary focus on number 3, which is how do we build the end markets as locally as we can. You know, I give an example of, we've got a small rural program in Emmett County that's probably one of the best rural programs around, but 93% of their material stays in the state of Michigan. And I would argue it's because they pay attention and they've built the relationships with the suppliers and folks that can take their material. The other piece that we're working on is number 6. There's billions of dollars being spent in this recycling and landfilling enterprises, and it's not as efficient as it could be. And we think there's a way to leverage the public investment, private investment, and a growing venture capital, and I would argue social impact investors that are interested in this space, especially to the extent this work can solve some of the equity issues of starting new companies and employing individuals in harder hit neighborhoods or cities, and maybe harder to employ individuals. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but our program in Michigan is pretty data driven. So we've analyzed where all the current infrastructure is. How much organics can we manage right now? How much recycling can we manage? What would it take if we could pull out that 2.7 million tons of material? And we know we're going to need about 1 million tons of new MRF throughput to make this happen in Michigan. Here in Ann Arbor, we've got a nonprofit rebuilding our MRF at $7 million. So we're over $200 million on recycling infrastructure that needs to get built here in Michigan. So with NextCycle, it's really designed around innovation challenges. And we've kind of taken the Colorado model and amplified it into 6 separate tracks you'll see in a minute. A real focus on investable products. How do we build that circular economy? And then something we're referring to as the Renew Partnership Portal, which is a way to kind of recognize investment that companies are already making in this space and finding those projects that if they had the right partners and the right funding, they could bring forward and help build that circular economy. So again, we're going to talk about on the right, innovation challenge tracks, and there's 6 of them in Michigan. But then again, on the left, there may be projects that don't need to go through an innovation accelerator. They just need to be connected to the right people to kind of make that project work. And we're trying to bring those 2 pieces together, you know, here in our project in Michigan. So again, the 6 challenge tracks we're working with down in the lower left, recycling innovation technology. That's really modeled on the Colorado experience. And how do you drive innovation with somebody who's got a new idea, new technology, and needs help building that business? Separate track on recycling supply chains. In Michigan, there's a big emphasis on rebuilding roads. There's a lot of, we think we're going to need to spend $2 to $4 billion rebuilding the roads here. And so where's that opportunity for asphalt and other items that might go into cement that would improve the quality of those materials and again, create demand? We also think there's incredible organics and compost demand if we're going to be rebuilding all those roads to revegetate a lot of those areas. Micros is a $5,000 to $10,000 small grant program. So you may need a baler to kind of make your project work, or may need to do a little research on a business plan. Intergovernmental initiatives is an area for the public sector and public-private partnerships. How do we drive innovation in that space? And then flows is the organics track, and you know, recognizing that of that material we're pulling out of landfills, a lot of it's organics, and we need to find a way to either upcycle that material or turn it into compost or anaerobic digesters to put it to a higher and better use. I'm going to wrap up in a minute. We've got a data room, so we're collecting all that data. If you want to know where all the polypropylene is in Michigan, we'll be able to tell you. We're currently seating advisory committees for each of those challenge tracks with experts from within Michigan, but also nationwide. And then depending on the track, there'll be boot camps, trainings, pitch sessions, showcases, and again, ways to kind of move these projects to implementation and execution. Here we'll be just, again, we're getting teams and we're going to be recruiting teams into these challenge tracks, much like Colorado, with the main goal that if you're keeping material out of municipal solid waste, out of landfills, you kind of fit in NextCycle. And as long as you're doing it in the state of Michigan, you're eligible to apply. So to wrap up, I think NextCycle is about bringing impact to communities, kind of filling the gaps and connecting the dots between interesting projects that kind of need the right connections, attracting investment and talent, things that our economic development groups are already doing and NextCycle aligns with, more infrastructure in end markets, and again, growing that economy here in Michigan. I'm going to touch on a couple things. Just NextCycle is a great project because it's kind of yes and. I think that, as I mentioned, there's a big equity potential, a way to build these new companies and jobs in harder hit areas. So we're working in Detroit, Flint, Benton Harbor to kind of find those opportunities. And in Michigan, we've got goals for carbon neutrality and building a carbon neutral economy by 2050. And we calculate that if we could keep that 2.7 million tons of material out of landfills, we would offset 7 million metric tons of carbon. And to put that in context, the city of Ann Arbor and the city of Grand Rapids, their carbon footprints are both about 2 million metric tons. So it's about 3.5 times these kind of good-sized city carbon footprints. So it's not an insignificant number. We've also done some analysis. If you look at the 700K number, what would happen if we just avoided about 14% of the food waste getting into the stream in the first place? So with that, I'm going to end. And if you know of any companies interested in doing business in Michigan, we'd be happy to chat with you. And I'm looking forward to answering your questions. Thanks, Wayne.
Okay, thank you, Matt. So we're going to move over to Kendra's presentation. So if you can share your screen, Kendra, you can get started. So Luke does not have a deck, but we do have a short video here that we want to show to you folks. Hopefully this works.
This is the future of recycling. FoamCycle is the first and patent-pending foam packaging collection, densifying, and recycling system. FoamCycle created a recycling solution to a problem that no one thought was possible. At the price of a pickup truck, adding a FoamCycle system to your municipal recycling drop-off center will help save our environment.
Well, thank you.
Hey, Luke.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for the intro video there, for showing that, and hello everyone. Thanks for having me on. Once again, my name is Lou Triano, and my company is called FoamCycle. FoamCycle is a Pike County, Pennsylvania-based company. So welcome to all my fellow Pennsylvanians on this call. Pennsylvania is a long way from Colorado, so let me explain how we got there. To better help you understand the concept behind NextCycle, I would say in one sentence, it's a Shark Tank for recyclers. I love that show. The NextCycle program extracts all of the necessary data from each of the participating recycling companies that participate, and it clearly defines each company's mission, and more importantly, it defines what it brings to the state. So it's definitely a collaborative effort in being chosen and presenting through this process. FoamCycle was fortunate to be included in the 2019 Colorado NextCycle program, as Kendra pointed out. I had the privilege in meeting in person, and that's pre-mask, Kendra, who's on the webinar. Hello, Kendra. Yuri Freeman, I have to say, he's a senior consultant at RRR, and he superbly managed the Colorado NextCycle program through all of its challenges, pre and post-COVID, along with Melissa Radwan, who's RRS's managing director. All good people that truly want to help the state succeed in ways that it's beyond a paycheck. You know, we just come across good people that just really believe in what they're doing. And it also was a pleasure to work with the big boss from RRS, JD Lindenberg from RRS, who offered much helpful advice and guidance throughout the process. So JD, if you're listening, thank you, my friend. The introduction to FoamCycle that you just viewed on the video clip is called a 30-second elevator pitch. And if you're not familiar with the concept, 30-second elevator pitches are used in everything from spotlighting a company to creating a personal resume about yourself. The idea being that if you can get someone's attention in 30 seconds, it would lead to a more in-depth conversation later, like perhaps with someone who's listening in on this video, I'll add. Okay, to be honest, I didn't know about the 30-second elevated pitch concept before being accepted into NextCycle. So that's one of the many ways in which NextCycle helped recycling companies develop its own unique story. I tend to tell a much longer version of a story, so discussing anything in 30 seconds or less was a foreign concept to me. A trait my wife of 35 years, no doubt, embedded in me. Okay, that said, the 30-second pitch is a prelude to a well-defined 5-minute presentation the NextCycle program also helped each team develop. It's the 5-minute presentation that's shown during the program's ending pitch session that's attended in person or virtually by many interested people from throughout a state. And in our case, it was actually throughout the country. I guess at the end of a Shark Tank, when Mr. Wonderful decides if your idea is worth investing in or not, it's similar, but NextCycle goes one step further than Shark Tank, like in the case of FoamCycle. And because FoamCycle, our system never sought a financial investor, but we only needed a platform into which to showcase our recycling system. And quite frankly, it worked. Fast forward, we're working currently with 2 locations in Colorado that are applying for grant funding to place our systems. And so our story has not ended, and hopefully in the near months coming, the months ahead, we'll tell even a more defined story on how NextCycle brought a recycle innovation to a particular municipality or county within Colorado. It's like a 1-2 punch, the NextCycle program. The way it was formatted, it's an effort both to combine state funding for a program and help increase the recycling rates through an innovative approach. So I really applaud their efforts, and the NextCycle program really was quite a great program, and I hope to see it expand into more states. Folks, if I could leave you with this, and I've been in the recycling industry for about 23 years in sales on both the waste and the recycling side, that despite all the recycling innovations happening at single stream recycling plants, the introduction of robotics, increased recycling rates that follow, are not going to happen simply at the curbside by itself. NextCycle helps introduce new recycling innovations that take place as standalone facilities. New closed loop packaging concept as one of the last teams that I met in NextCycle Colorado. So it's a great program. I'm thrilled and deeply appreciative of being part of it. I hope everyone got some good information off of this webinar, and thanks for having me.
All right, thank you, Lou. So we're going to have some questions. So if you do have a question, just post it on the Q&A tab on your screen. We don't have any right now, so I'll start off with one. How does it get started in the state? I mean, is it a marketing function from RRS, or is there somebody reaching out to you folks at RRS and starting this whole process? I'm just curious how things get initiated in the state.
You know, and I can't speak to how it got started in Colorado, other than we've got an office in Boulder, and Yuri, who's based there, I think knows a lot about the Colorado recycling program, and maybe Kendra can speak a little bit to the genesis there. In Michigan, you know, I think the state recognized what was going on in Colorado, and they put out an RFP that was a competitively bid, and RS bid on it and won it with this team with Centropolis and the Michigan Recycling Coalition. So it's kind of a really good partnership here in the state. And so the state funds that infrastructure to kind of support this. And I didn't mention, you know, the other piece that we're hoping at the end is there's, like Colorado, there's investors. And we're seeing some really innovative approaches. If I can take a minute, we've got a county that just dedicated $50,000 a year for 5 years in grant money to any NextCycle team that locates in their county. So we're starting to see some regional interest across the state, and it's just exciting to see kind of how some of these funds can align to support these programs.
So what's the typical funding? Is it typically mostly the state funding, and then you have the partnering organizations chip in a certain amount of match or in kind?
Well, I think in this case, the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, EGLE, is the primary funder. You know, and as we're building this network across the state, and obviously there's challenges with COVID, and but we've got our state economic development agency lined up with NextCycle now, and looking to bring in agriculture, especially around that organics part. And you know, we've got a growing cannabis industry, and you know, where does industrial hemp and industrial hemp waste fit in there? And lots of other grant programs that already exist, like scrap tires and things like that, that we're hoping to leverage. So for now, Wayne, the simple answer is EGLE is funding the primary piece of this, but we're looking to leverage some of the grants from other state departments and other municipalities, you know, as we kind of build this.
And Kendra, as far as Colorado, how's the funding divvied up there?
So we developed NextCycles specifically to create in-market development and really stimulate that circular economy in the state. Our REO has been the primary funder from the very beginning. And part of the reason we needed to do this is we were funding in-market projects, but what we were finding is that as the projects were getting underway, the folks that were implementing them were not necessarily 100% ready. They might be 100% ready to start doing the work they think is needed, but they didn't have that business plan and hadn't really thought through the conceptual part of what they were doing. So the idea with NextCycle, and again, we worked with Yuri Freeman, who has been great and has real good insight to the Colorado recycling market, was to develop sort of that incubator, that support system to make sure as those programs rolled out and funding became available, that they were ready to actually be successful. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Some questions for Lou. What is the end product from the foam cycle process?
Okay, great. Thanks for that question. In New Jersey, where we started with our first public-private partnership concept in Sussex County, New Jersey, Rini Casapula, the recycling coordinator from that county, now part of the foam cycle team, we developed a relationship with a company also based in New Jersey that will purchase the densified foam from the system to create picture frame molding boards. Real unique company. one of the only companies of its kind in the US, as all of its competitors are overseas. And we have open house at this facility to show the process. So in essence, we're taking the ignits, they call it, shipping it to New Jersey to this processing center, making a foam board, and then soon to make a picture frame from it called Better Frame. So if anyone wants to go on the betterframe.org website, they can see the story there.
Are there any other markets on the horizon for the material?
Oh, there are actually many markets. It's a very valuable commodity. The most recent price on foam ingots is about 16 cents a pound. So at $320 a ton, I would put that against any material that's coming out of any MRF as far as value wise. And because it's so valuable, there is a high demand for so many products that are made from it, both overseas, a lot in Canada. They're making furniture out of it. They're making different types of construction materials are used from that polystyrene product. Yes, there's a big draw on it.
Mm-hmm. And as far as the feedstocks, do you plan these things around food service entities, or is it more of a packing material? What's the main feedstock source?
Yeah, sure. It's up to the choice of the municipality or the county. We started with simply focusing on foam packaging recycling by itself. It's the most impactful on a landfill. And in Sussex County, the recycling center where we had our public-private partnership and still do, we've done a lot of testing with a local college on foam's impact on a landfill. So we have some interesting information on that to share if anybody's interested. But last year FoamCycle won 4 grant awards from the Foam Recycling Coalition, which is in big part from the foam packaging industry. And we're able to place 4 systems, 2 in Florida, 1 in Pennsylvania, and 1 in North Carolina, that all accept both food service foam and foam packaging through their process. That could actually be found on our website, foamcycle.com, and you can see the videos of each one of those sites and the process.
I guess this question is for Matt. Is there any connection between NextCycle and the Closed Loop Fund?
Yeah, I was just typing my answer, which you'll see in a minute. So the short answer is yes. We're talking with Closed Loop Fund, along with any other venture capital, philanthropy, social impact funders. The current list of official partners are kind of up on the nextcyclemichigan.com website. And, again, we just started in October, really building this network. So we expect that number of partners and investors to grow, certainly over the next couple months.
And that's for Michigan. Are there any other states other than Michigan and Colorado involved with NextCycle?
Not yet, although I can tell you anecdotally, I was part of a network of city sustainability directors in my previous life with the city of Ann Arbor. And I just saw Cambridge, Mass is looking for a circular economy study. Cleveland has just started Circular Cleveland. So I think there's a lot of both state and, big and small city interest in this space. And how NextCycle expands is yet to be seen.
Yeah, it kind of leads into the next question. Is this a national program, state, or local driven program, or all the above?
I think there's a variety of models. It's yet to be seen how this would work at a small city scale. I think, what's been demonstrated is it's certainly been able to work at the state scale. Whether, Cleveland sets up something because like a big city framework, if the state's not stepping in, that could be a model that could move forward. I'm not convinced that like NextCycle at a, Ann Arbor, Michigan, 100,000 person city really works to bring the right regional, all the different pieces you need to make this work. I don't know if Kendra has some thoughts on scale.
So in Colorado, we have the Metro Denver area, which, I think in theory, it could probably work in that part of the state, but so much recycling happens in the rural parts of our states that I think we really have to be a statewide program. to be successful.
Okay. This question is, are there any B corporations or worker-owned co-ops in this program?
Well, we don't have any teams accepted yet, but there's nothing that would preclude a B Corp from being even a nonprofit from being part.
Mhm.
I think the idea is that it's investable, and at a minimum, it's not going to lose money.
Right.
In Colorado, we have not had a B Corp as one of our teams yet, but I think that would be a great thing. We did have one nonprofit participate in the first cohort, which was, I thought that was great. And it definitely, I think, helped the nonprofit group kind of think outside the box.
Okay. This is for Matt. Briefly touched on roadway recycling. What things are in the recycled mix for roadways besides asphalt and concrete? Are you using alternative aggregate substitutes?
Again, we're new, but I would err on the side of kind of everything fits unless it's really not MSW. You know, somebody came up with a problem in a food manufacturer that has a lot of starch in wastewater, and is that something that fits in NextCycle? And it's not clear that that does, although we're going to figure out a way if it does. So what I can tell you is a company that does glass foam aggregate has reached out to us about locating in Michigan. Whether they'd be in a track, I'm not sure yet, but I think there's been an interest in kind of helping create an end market for glass in Michigan. And that I think is in that roadway construction material space.
Right, right. And just FYI, our last month's webinar, we had the person from the National Paving Association. I got that wrong, but it's a national industry organization for asphalt paving, and we did talk about the various recycled products that can be used in road projects. So if you just go to our website, and you can view that webinar if you want some more information. I know rubber is used in asphalt as a modifier, plastic, and also glass with as aggregate substitute. And as Matt said, the foam glass is used in the substructures and embankments and so forth. So there's a lot of recycled materials or potential recycled materials that can be used in transportation projects. So this question: our projects NextCycle sees are mostly delivering a product, or can service entities, for example, nonprofits that facilitate recycling initiatives, apply? And you might have touched on this a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know, Kendra, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. So in Colorado, our program is really hyper-focused on in-market development. So what we want to support is a team that's going to develop a product, a very specific product, such as what FoamCycle and Lou have done, or a component of what would be useful in an in-market, such as pelletized plastic. So for Colorado, it has been very in-market specific.
Okay, I think that's all of our questions. So we'll wrap it up. So again, this webinar, like all the webinars in this series, has been recorded and will be made available via YouTube links on both the National Recycling Coalition and Recycling Market Center websites. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll webinar and please visit our website for schedule updates. Thank you, Matt, Kendra, and Lou for taking time to make these presentations. So have a great day, everybody, and hopefully we'll see you next month.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Wayne. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Kendra. Bye now.
Thanks. Bye.